Hi, my name is Jeff H. Sipe, and I have over 10 years of recruiting experience, including 5 years at Google. In this video, I want to tackle how to answer commonly asked interview questions. And specifically, I want to focus more on the simplistic questions. So the why, the how, the what commonly asked questions. And remember, there is no perfect answer to any of these questions. But in this video, what I really want to focus on are a couple of very simple tricks and tips that are really going to help you have success. We will create this framework, and then I want to go through 3 different sets of example answers and how you're building in that connectivity and adaptability with your interviewers. If you like my content, please like. If you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like my overall content, please subscribe. Item 1, types. What I really want to focus on is, again, these more simplistic questions. So that tell me about yourself, why do you want to work here, what are your strengths, how do you handle stressful situations, how do you prioritize, questions like that. And so it's really important to understand that we're not going to talk about tell me about a time when questions, even though there are a number of behavioral questions like that that are commonly asked. I want to focus on the questions that are going to require a shorter answer, and that will really help us use that framework today. Item 2, research. So really this is 4 steps. The first step is I just simplistically want you to ask your recruiter, do you guys ask commonly asked questions? If so, what are those commonly asked questions that you ask? Now, your recruiter might actually be able to give you a little bit of background like, hey, we're definitely going to ask you, tell me about yourself, or why do you want to work here? So be prepared for those questions. If they give you nothing, no big deal. You just always want to ask because typically they can give you a couple of questions that are commonly asked at their specific organization. Second, researching the company more generically will just be really, really helpful. What do they look for candidates? How does it pertain to their culture? This might impact whether these types of questions are asked or not. Third, you specifically want to go and research types of questions asked at that organization. And of course, Glassdoor is going to be absolutely your best resource. You might find them on other sources like Quora, for instance, but Glassdoor is definitely where you should start and spend most of your time, especially for these bigger companies. And then lastly is through networking. Hands down the most difficult way to find out questions that might be asked of you, especially commonly asked questions, but it's worth a shot. Please do not skip these simple steps. Research is such an important component to success. Item 3, positivity. So on these less complex, commonly asked questions, one of the things that interviewers sometimes are trying to do is trip you up a little bit. So if you're speaking about yourself or you're speaking about anybody else, just use positive words, and to the extent that you can, switch a negatively focused phrasing in an interview question into a positive. So the easiest example is, tell me about a weakness. Great question, Jane. You're asking me to tell me about an area of growth I've had in the past. So you've changed weakness to growth. Again, not always the easiest thing to do, but something I want you to try. Okay, item 4, framework. Let's dive right in. This is the how. And the easiest way to go about this, do a self-assessment and just think about your top 3 strengths and how they correlate to the position and the overall industry. This is where your research is going to be absolutely critical. You're definitely going to want to dive into the job description. And lastly, with your strengths, it is critical that you have examples to back up each one of these strengths, and ideally multiple examples. Yes, this is pretty simple, but this will set you up for success. And lastly, for these types of questions, I really think your initial answer should be less than 1 minute. Now, nobody can actually give you guidance on how long your answer should be. The answer is always, it depends. But your initial setup, your initial introduction of these concepts really can be 1 minute or less. And then you're going to ask follow-up questions. And that's a great segue into item 5, which is follow-up questions. This approach won't work unless you take this step, because your brevity, it just might catch your interviewer off guard. Like when they ask you to tell me about yourself question and your initial answer is 30 seconds, they're going to be thinking, whoa. But if you ask really good specific follow-up questions, it will really create good connectivity and adaptability. And that's specifically what item 6 is, connectivity and adaptability. This approach will also not work if you are not connecting these concepts across multiple questions. That will be critical. And then secondarily, adapting to your interviewer. And so if you continue to get these simplistic, commonly asked questions, you're going to have to switch up your strategy a little bit, because they're going to continue to hear the same thing over and over again, and ultimately you won't get hired. And we'll cover how to do this in examples in items 8 and 9. So item 7, sample examples. So for these sample examples, I'm just going to pretend that I'm the interviewer and I'm going into Apple to interview for a technical recruiter role. What I've identified and I have self-awareness about is that my 3 core strengths are acting as a trusted advisor, problem solving, and overall my communication skills. So let's tackle a few questions. Tell me about yourself. Jane, great question. So you want to learn a little bit more about me. You know, I've thought a lot about this question, and as it pertains to a technical recruiter role at Apple, I want you to know that the number one area I like to operate and be is I love to be in that trusted advisor seat, and I know that that correlates really well into my problem solving skill set. If I'm always acting as a trusted advisor, I'll always be digging into the weeds and really being able to get to that problem solving level. And if I do both of these items well, it's really going to foster exceptional communication across teams, across groups, across leadership. Of these 3 items, is there one that you want me to focus on in greater detail? Is there one that is a particular need for Apple right now? Another common question is, why do you want to work here? Jane, I've been excited to answer this question, and just to restate, you want to know why I want to work at Apple. And the number one reason is the ability to operate as a trusted advisor to some amazing technical leadership at the global leader in design. Secondarily, I think it's a unique opportunity to utilize my problem-solving skills, and I know that Apple is full of unique opportunities and challenges. Lastly, communication. I know with tight deadlines at a design company like Apple that communication is critical, and I'm excited to bring that communication piece to this organization. Can I expand or clarify any of those items or concepts for you? And third would be, why are you looking to leave your current company? Jay and I have thought a lot about this question, and to restate, you want to know why I'm looking to leave Google. And in my career, I've really been focused on being exceptional in 3 areas. Being a really strong, trusted advisor, really working on problem solving across teams, across leaderships, across all groups, and focusing on my communication skills. And working at a company like Apple is going to give me the opportunity to continue to evolve and grow these skills. Can I go into any more detail on these particular skills and how they pertain to Apple, and why I'm excited to share and develop and work on these skills at your organization? In each question, you switched up the wording a little bit on your strengths, but the messaging is the same. And of course, these answers aren't perfectly crafted, but something in this sense, you're going to start to build this connectivity with your interviewer, and they're probably going to want to dive in and know a little bit more. All the answers provide follow-up questions. Now, the more specificity in those follow-up questions, the better, but you still have to follow up. And that's a great segue into item 8, connectivity. So let's build in connectivity after we answer a question already providing those 3 strengths. How do you like to be managed? Jane, thank you. It's definitely an important question. And so to repeat, you're asking me how I like to be led. And when I think about this question, it really brings me back to how I identify my strengths, as we discussed in the Tell Me About Yourself question. When leadership allows me to step into a trusted advisor role, gives me the flexibility to problem solve small and large challenges, and offers me the opportunity to communicate across teams, I believe there'll be a strong likelihood for success that will create and foster this foundation of success and a meaningful relationship with my lead. Can I provide a little bit more clarification on how these three items connect to how I like to be led when I join a new organization or when I change jobs within an organization? This example would really show off my communication skill set because I'm bringing in connectivity from one answer into another, and I'm staying consistent with asking follow-up questions. Item 9, adaptability example. Okay, let's take it a step further and let's answer the question, how do you deal with stressful situations? Jane, to restate, you're asking me how I deal with situations where there's opportunity to enhance my skill set under pressure or under a timeline. And I don't want to be too repetitive, but I prioritize based on my three core competencies that we've discussed in the last few examples, which are being a trusted advisor, problem solving, and ultimately my communication skills. Now, I'm happy to explore the question from a more generic approach and really kind of dive in and make some assumptions and take the more open-ended approach to this question, or I'm happy to provide you an example. Is there a path that you prefer? And at this point, you're letting Jane know I'm not pretending like I haven't already mentioned these three items. I'm trying to really adapt to Jane and kind of give her a little bit more of a sense of who I am, how I might operate on the job, and therefore increase my likelihood of getting hired. Again, it's always a lot to kind of dive in, but if you take this really simplistic approach of focusing on your three strengths and going in and having those great follow-up questions, this methodology will work, and if you stick to this framework, you really won't have any challenge with these simplistic, commonly asked questions. I really hope this helps. Thanks.